Hello and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about the Subata. The Subata has been changed since Season 4, which is pretty awesome. And I'm going to be going over all of the overclocks for the Subata, as well as builds that I'd recommend with them, and another paired weapon to go with them. This isn't going to be a very detailed guide. Those are saved for other videos. So our very first build is going to be utilizing automatic fire. Automatic fire is probably one of the most straightforward overclocks for the Subata. It makes it so your gun is automatic, so you don't have to tap the trigger every time. You can just hold it right down, keep on firing. This lets you have more DPS effectively because you have a faster rate of fire, and it also gives you more recoil, which can be kind of an issue. The way I'm building automatic fire for this build is like this. With this in tier 1, we are taking better accuracy, so the gun doesn't bounce around as much. This is going to help minimize the amount of recoil that we have. In tier 2, we're going with extra ammo, so we can use this more often. In tier 3, we're going with recoil reduction. That will help a lot. Both the tier 1 and the tier 3 with this combination makes it so that automatic fire is extremely controllable, so you can just hold this right on the target that you're trying to hit, and it actually makes it so automatic fire still works at pretty long range. In tier 4, I'm going with even more ammo because you can run through ammo pretty fast with this, and this is going to be, at least for this build, our primary long to medium-ish range weapon. It will also work fairly well at close range though too, because it is fully automatic. And then in tier 5, we're going with blow-through rounds, although tier 5 does vary quite a bit depending on which weapons you enjoy using. If you're taking this with the flamethrower, I don't see why you wouldn't take volatile bullets then. That'll just get you more damage, assuming you are using the flamethrower and you're lighting things on fire first. The second option in tier 5 generally is considered for the cryocannon, but blow-through rounds on any weapon is really good, so I usually take it with this one because a lot of the time I'm going to be using this at kind of longer ranges and trying to punch through multiple enemies that are coming. Even if I'm not using it, there's still a chance that I might get some extra value out of it. And then you could also go with the new Neuro Catalyst in tier 5 as well if you're going to the sludge pump, which is exactly what we're going to be taking this with. Disperser Compound is a fantastic overclock that gives you a lot of crowd control. The main way that we're going to be using this is use Disperser Compound to slow down a bunch of enemies, get them all clustered up, and then fire through them with the Subata just like a little submachine gun so that we can do more damage. We'll also be using the Subata at longer ranges thanks to this build. I also should mention that in tier 3 with the 2-round burst option, it works really weird with automatic fire. I'm not sure if it's bugged or if it's working the way that it's intended, but every time you fire the gun, it seems to fire out 2 shots but only consume 1 ammo. And it seems like it does more damage. I'm not actually sure. I haven't really tested that, but it is kind of difficult to control because it is 2-round burst that's automatic. But if you do get used to it, you can potentially get even more damage out of it. Just something I thought I would throw in here. Moving on to our second build, we're going to be taking tranquilizer rounds. This is another unstable overclock for the Subata, and this one actually did get changed. This is the only Subata overclock that actually got changed in Season 4, although the Subata as a whole got changed entirely with all of its different mods in it. But tranq rounds got a new buff to where any enemy that can't be stunned is now slowed, which is pretty useful. So what tranquilizer rounds does is that it has a 50% chance whenever you hit an enemy with your Subata rounds to stun them. And this stun lasts for 6 seconds, which is the second longest stun in the game right now, since the boomerang kind of beat out tranquilizer rounds once it came out. But that's still a pretty decent effect. If the enemy can't be stunned, like I said, it will now slow the enemy, which can help against big things like oppressors. Downsides to this, though, are that you lose out on magazine size a little bit, and you lose out on rate of fire a little bit. Neither one of these are a huge deal, though, for tranquilizer rounds. The way I like to build tranquilizer rounds is like this. So in tier 1, I'm going with larger magazines. This is just to make up for the ammo that we lost. However, if you don't feel like that's necessary, you could go with the accuracy too. They're both really good options. Tier 2, I'm going with extra ammo because a lot of the time we're just going to want to try to stun enemies with this and then finish them off with our primary weapon, or stun enemies as quickly as we can, so then we can just keep hitting them with the Subata, assuming they're smaller enemies, maybe like grunts. Tier 3, we're going with the 2-round burst. This does make it so hitting and stunning enemies is pretty consistent just with 1 burst. In tier 4, we're going with extra ammo, so we can stun enemies still. You could go with damage here, or more weak spot damage. That works pretty well with tranq rounds too. And then in tier 5, again, it heavily depends on what your primary weapon is. For this, we are once again going to the sludge pump, so I am going with the Neuro Catalyst, which does kind of help because if you hit something with a sludge pump, then shoot them with this, they get stunned, they're stuck in the sludge, they're just taking damage over time. And for this, we're going to be taking Sludge Blast on the sludge pump. This is a devastating overclock that deals really high damage to really big enemies. You can run through ammo with it kind of fast, but that's not usually a huge deal unless you're just fighting constant big enemies like oppressors and stuff, because that's what you're going to be wanting the Charge Blast for. Other than that, you can just shoot regular shots at smaller enemies, pull out the Subata and shoot them. And this does make it so your ammo goes a little bit further because of the necro catalyst. So once you hit them with the sludge, you shoot them, they pop, they deal damage to everything else around them, and you can get a little bit more value that way. So you're not actually running through ammo too quickly. Moving on to our third overclock, we have oversized magazine. This is a balanced overclock that is very simple. It gives you more ammo in the gun, but a slightly longer reload speed. That's not necessarily a huge deal if you're running something like Born Ready, which is a little bit of a weird perk to run on Driller, and not what I'm going to be running on this, mostly due to my primary weapon. But if you are running either the flamethrower or the sludge pump, it can be a pretty decent option because you can't really run through ammo with this before your other gun gets reloaded thanks to Born Ready. The way I like building oversized magazine is like this. So in tier 1, I'm going with a larger magazine so we can hold 26 shots. It's not necessary, but it is kind of fun just keep spamming this. Tier 2, I'm running extra ammo, but you could take extra damage here too. I usually take 1 damage and 1 ammo mod, either in tier 2 or tier 4. So whichever one you would like there. In tier 3, I'm going with a faster reload speed. This is just to set our reload speed back to normal. Although if you don't intend on reloading it, then the 2-round burst or the reduced recoil would be a better option. I usually either take damage or ammo in tier 4 and tier 2, so I can switch these around whenever I'd like. Or you could take the weak spot damage, which is really good. And then in tier 5, I'm going with blow-through rounds. This is mostly because I'm going to be taking this with the cryocannon, and neither of the other 2 options really benefit me. So again, depending on whatever primary weapon you take, pick accordingly with your tier 5. The cryocannon, I'm going to be taking Ice Spear. This way I can use Ice Spear at very long range against large targets, and I can just use the regular cryocannon towards smaller enemies, and then use the Subata to pick off enemies at a distance, or just to get me a little bit more value as I'm plinking at enemies that are coming towards me. Very simple build and very simple overclock, but I do enjoy it. For our 4th build, we're going to be using Explosive Reload, which has always been a very solid overclock on the Subata. This works the same way as embedded detonators with the Zhukovs. If you don't know what that means, it means that whenever your bullet hits an enemy, it sticks inside of that enemy, assuming it hit a soft part of the enemy. If it hits armor, this isn't as effective. But if it hits a soft part of the enemy, it sticks in it. When you go to reload, it detonates that, dealing damage to him. And this deals, I think, 38 damage per explosion. So it can rack up a lot of damage per second. Main downsides to this, though, are that we lose out on magazine size and we lose out on a lot of ammo. So the main way I usually build it is like this. In tier 1, I take larger magazine size, so I can go back up to 8 rounds. It's still not a whole lot of bullets, but it is some bullets. In tier 2, I'm going with ammo. Always take ammo over damage with these type of weapons because you're going to get more damage in the long run. Buffing the initial hit damage does not buff the actual explosion damage itself. So the explosion damage is always going to be a flat rate, and having more explosions is going to be generally more useful than just having more damage on your regular bullet hits. Tier 3, we're going to faster reload speed. This is just so that we can trigger it more often. However, the 2-round fire can be pretty fun with this one too, so if you like that, feel free to take it. Or if you want to take reduced recoil, you can always take that one. Tier 4, definitely take more ammo here. Again, same type of thing. Even the extra weak spot damage still really isn't worth it. More ammo is going to get you more damage in the long run. And then in tier 5, I'm going with blow-through rounds because blow-through rounds does work with embedded detonators. So once you hit through somebody, you can potentially hit another bug behind that, or robot, or whatever it might be. Stick 2 in one, and then when you go to reload, it will explode both of them, which can be pretty good. Usually you don't take this with embedded detonators on the Zhukovs because it's also in a tier where you can take ammo, and that's just more consistent.
Hi, Editing Ron here. For some reason I said that I was taking Snowball in this video. I'm not sure where I got that from. Maybe I wrote it down somewhere and that's why I said it. Snowball would still be a really good overclock if you wanted to take it with Explosive Reload. But for this particular one that we're playing in the background here, I'm running Fuel Stream Diffuser for the Flamethrower, which gives you extra reach. Works really well for crowds, and then you can use the Explosive Reload to deal with very large enemies like the Flying Rocks, or bigger enemies like Oppressors and Praetorians. Back to the video.
For my next build, I'm going to be using the Clean Overclock Chain Hit. This one makes it so anytime that I hit an enemy in the weak spot, there's a 75% chance that that bullet will bounce into another nearby enemy. This doesn't target weak spots or anything, it just goes towards whatever enemy is closest. So that can be useful, or it could be a little bit not as useful, because if it hits a grunt in the face and deals a lot of damage, that's awesome. But then if the next round bounces into an oppressor's face, it's not going to hurt it at all. Luckily, a lot of the time you're just hitting one grunt and bouncing into another grunt, or web spitter into another web spitter, so you're generally getting a little bit more value from this overclock. The way I like to build it is like this. So in tier 1, I'm going with the larger magazine size, so we can go up to 16 rounds, which is pretty fun, although accuracy is a really good option here too. Pick whichever one you'd like. Tier 2, I like going with more damage here, just so that we can get a little bit more value per shot out of this. And our primary weapon is generally fairly ammo efficient, so we don't have to worry about running through ammo too much. In tier 3, we're going with a faster reload speed, but any of them in tier 3 are pretty good. You could take recoil reduction, you could take 2-round burst. 2-round burst is a little bit difficult to keep on target when you're constantly trying to hit weak spots. Tier 4, it makes sense to go with more weak spot damage so that we can hit a little bit harder every time we do hit a weak spot. And then in tier 5, I'm going with volatile bullets so we can do more damage when something is on fire, because I'm going to be taking the flamethrower with this one, and we're going to be running face melter on it. Face melter is a very fun overclock that lets you do really high damage at very close range to enemies. We're going to be using the Subata for long and medium range, and then once anything gets up close, we'll hit it with the flamethrower and either kill it outright or at least light it on fire, and then start shooting it in the weak spot with the Subata, so that we can get a little bit more damage from that. You could really mix this with anything from the flamethrower, assuming you want to run this build. And then for our final overclock, we're going to be taking Homebrew powder. Homebrew powder randomizes your damage with the Subata. This gives you between 80% and 140% damage, evening out to about 110% on average. So you are getting a damage buff on this, and you can potentially high or low roll this. The way I'm building it, it shouldn't matter if you low roll, and most of the time it really doesn't matter if you low roll anyway, since you're only really worried about low rolling against swarmers, and Driller doesn't have any problem dealing with swarmers whatsoever. So the way I have this built is to deal as much consistent damage towards large enemies and hopefully high roll some more damage. So in tier 1, I'm running the larger mag size. In tier 2, I'm running more damage. Tier 3, I'm running the 2-round burst, but any of them in tier 3 work pretty well with this. Whatever you would like. This will just give me a little bit more DPS, but so will faster reload speed, if I'm being honest, in most situations. Tier 4, I'm going with more damage. You could go with the extra weak spot damage here, though, too, if you keep finding yourself hitting weak spots, or you could go with ammo. All of them are pretty good. I just wanted more damage for this. And then in tier 5, I'm going with blow-through rounds so I can potentially hit more enemies. Also in tier 5, I'm not taking this with the flamethrower or with the sludge pump, so you might want to consider either of those options in tier 5 too, if you are planning on taking it. I'm going to be taking the cryocannon once again, and this time I'm going to be taking flow rate expansion, which is a very odd overclock, and one that I always find to feel just really weird, but I actually kind of like it quite a bit. I'm not entirely sure why, but sometimes it feels just really nice to use at times, so I don't know. Sometimes I drop this overclock, sometimes I switch it out for other overclocks. You could go with some more normal overclocks, maybe go with the clean overclock for the cryocannon if you just want a strong all-around build, or maybe go with something like Ice Storm if you want to kill things a bit faster. So with the new Subata coming out, we do have a pretty interesting set of mods that you can actually take with it now, and it does feel quite a bit better than it used to. It's still not a weapon I see a ton of, but I know a lot of drillers really liked the Subata just because it felt the most normal out of their secondaries. And yeah, it does. It feels by far the most normal out of Driller's secondaries, probably the most normal out of any of their weapons besides maybe the flamethrower. And now it is kind of competing with the other weapons. Before, the only real overclock that kind of competed with the other secondaries was like explosive reload. Usually you didn't see much else other than that and like automatic fire, but everybody loved automatic fire just because it was very fun. I think the new changes are pretty good. Tell me your thoughts down in the comments below on the Subata and all of its overclocks, and how have you been enjoying the new Subata. Thank you guys so very much for watching this. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye!